Hey, hey. Hey, hey, everybody. We got to give them a few minutes to get in here and get situated.
Yeah.
Yeah, grab their drinks. We're gonna wait just maybe about a minute or two. Oh, Sharita's on time, girl. Good evening. Good evening. Go ahead and tell us where you're from in the chat. Where you checking in from? And we are streaming across Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. We're on YouTube. We are live. We are everywhere. We are everywhere today. Yep. Good evening. Good evening. I'm going to try to pop back and forth between LinkedIn because sometimes I can't see you guys' name. I can see that you're a LinkedIn user. I can see where you're checking in from, but I may not see your name. All right. So we got a bunch of people catching. We got Carla, Karen. All right. Tamika. All right. We got the people all over. We got Dallas, New Jersey. I love it. We got Maryland, New York. We got Atlanta. I'll be in Atlanta soon. Atlanta's a good day trip for me. Going from Birmingham to Atlanta, that's a good little day trip. California. Hey, William, it's been a long time since we chatted. All right, cool. All right, so we're going to try to preserve the time where everybody's checking in and getting here. We're going to introduce ourselves in just in a few seconds. Let me get myself together here. All right, so I'm Ashley Thomas. For those of you who do not know me, I'm a nationally certified resume writer, and I'm also a nationally certified online profile expert, which is a fancy way to say LinkedIn profile expert. And I'm also a former recruiter of 20 years. So I stopped recruiting in February of 2024. So I have a long history of recruiting. I'm a LinkedIn top voice, and I was also 3 times nominated as JobScan's top 15 job search experts to follow. And I've been LinkedIn top voice twice, and I've also been featured in some major publications. And I primarily support mid-career to senior level professionals that are going into leadership or already in leadership and they're looking to go to that executive level. I help them with their resumes, LinkedIn profiles, job search strategy, interviews, salary negotiation, all things job search. So welcome. And I want to introduce you to my colleague, Nathan Adams. He is visiting with me again this time. So he's going to help me with these resume reviews. Nathan, tell them what's going on with you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Ashley. Nathan Adams. I'm a certified resume writer and career coach. Been doing this work for 23 years now. Got into the business after actually losing my job through a layoff. But I've been a nationally published writer. Actually, one thing that's not on my profile, last fall I was invited to speak at a Black Enterprise event, Black Men Excel, down in Miami. So went down there and spoke about salary negotiation. But day to day I help clients and people who are looking for work with their resumes, with their LinkedIn profiles, job search strategy, salary negotiation, interview training, reviewed and written thousands of resumes. And happy to kind of be here again with Ashley and see if we can help you guys with your resumes.
Yes. It was good. Kenyari. All right. Yeah. Kenyari says, hi. Hello. Oh, we got some people checking in from Alabama. We got somebody all the way from Nigeria. I love it.
Oh, wow.
Love it. So let's jump in. We've got a bunch of resumes this time. I'm going to take the first one and then you kind of can jump in if you want to add something and we can kind of go back and forth from there.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to blow this up a little bit. Y'all let me know when you can see it good. We're good. Let's look at page 1 first. Are we blown up enough here?
It's good for me.
All right. Good deal. Okay. So this is the top of the resume. So I did block out this person's name, but they are an AIRS. They have an AIRS certification. And so that is recruiting kind of talent attraction certification. So I did want to show that in many cases, it can be appropriate for you to list your list your name and then comma and whatever your certification is. However, I want to caution you guys, just because you have that certification does not mean it needs to be front and center on your resume. This one is appropriate because this is an HR related certification. It is also a HR related resume, right? So because this person is targeting TA, which is talent acquisition or talent attraction, whatever however the organization categorizes it. HR, which is human resources, and then ER, which is employee relations. So that is a very relevant certification to have. But one thing that you do want to make sure that you're paying attention to whether or not that certification is relevant to where you're headed. Okay, so you don't need to be talking about certifications that you got for accounting when you're targeting HR jobs, right? Or marketing, or whatever the case may be. You also don't have to put MBA behind your name anymore, because MBAs come a dime a dozen, and it does not add any value by telling somebody that you have an MBA with your name. Okay. It used to, to add value, but, over the last 15, 20, 10 to 15 years, I'll say that it's become less and less as a differentiator because so many people have MBAs. All right. So when I'm looking at the resume overall, there's kind of a lot going on here. There's a lot, so there's some good content here. The first thing that jumps out for me is dynamic and results driven. So you got two overused buzzwords at the very opening of the resume. So already on board. So you got dynamic, you got results driven, and then you got track record, so those things, those words are buzzwords. Those are things that people put in their resumes to kind of make them sound important, but they don't have very much, to back this stuff up. So just be careful with how you describe yourself. I need to be able to read the first line of your summary statement and feel like I need to get you on the phone already. I need to feel like you can solve my problem already. Okay. So be careful with how you describe yourself, especially when you say you're results driven and then you have no results. Thankfully, the owner of this resume actually does have results on the resume. So it makes sense. But I do, encourage you and I challenge you to find another way to describe yourself than dynamic and results driven, because so many people now are saying it, those very same things about themselves. But overall, I think it's a good summary statement. Based on the resumes that we reviewed the last time, those summary statements were wall to wall when it came to text. And so I feel like this resume owner is actually, they did good. They didn't use more than 5 lines. They use very succinct sentences. So, I like it. They're talking about the relationships that they built. They're talking about the people-centric solutions, which that's a big thing in HR right now. They talked about being able to enhance employee engagement. So they're telling the value that they bring. And that's the whole point of that summary statement, is to talk about who you are, which is the results driven professional, which we're going to work on that. But who you are, what you do, which they said that they do talent acquisition, employee relations, performance management, and things like that. And then where they add value, they build those strong relationships. They also implement people-centric solutions, and then they enhance employee engagement. They optimize workforce performance. So already I know the value that they bring, but I wish they just hadn't bored me to death with the first 2 words. All right. So there's a lot of graphics that are going on this resume. Mm-hmm. And so the point of the graphic should be to draw attention to very important or key information. So I'm not mad at the fact that you use graphics. Just be careful, because when you start to look here in your experience section, you're taking up a lot of valuable space by repeating some of the things that are already in the core competency section, or things that you've already mentioned elsewhere in the resume. So remember, when you're adding the graphic, it should be to add additional value or to draw attention to something that may have otherwise been missed. So I really don't feel like these boxes are adding anything to the resume. So I would prefer to see them gone. I also will say that while you have written the resume with the structure that we prefer, which is the listing of the city, the company, the location, which the location here is remote. And so I left the city visible on all of the resumes, because I want to show how that can be interpreted by somebody like a recruiter, like me, who would be reviewing this document to determine your fit for the role. So putting that you worked somewhere remotely could help you, especially if you're applying to a remote role. It doesn't seem like there's going to be that big of a transition, right? Because you've already used to, to working remote. You do have a description of the role. So you talked about the things that you were brought on board to, to actually do, or what you were hired to do. And then in the bullets, there are some achievements. So I like, all of those things. There are some opportunities that you can kind of up level, maybe those accomplishments, and maybe incorporate numbers where you can. But remember, we quantify with impact, not just numbers. So it is, okay that you've listed some things here, but some of these bullets are tasks. Because when you start talking about that you complied with job requirements and organizational objectives while evaluating and choosing candidates, that's not an accomplishment. That's something that you were already supposed to do as a recruiter. So, again, your bullets should always be accomplishments. Now, revitalize the selection process. While you were doing that, you can kind of take it to the next level and talk about what happened, what was going on, like what was the reason for you having to revitalize it? What was the outcome of you, doing that? Did it improve productivity? Did it, help with the candidate experience? Whatever that was. Right. So, I do like those things, but it's really crammed. It's really, really tight. So there's everything. There's no space to breathe. So I would like to see more white space, and you would have that if the space wasn't being taken up by unnecessary graphics. And that's the trend throughout this resume. So if we look over at page 2, there again, there's no breathing room at all between these positions. So I would love to see at least a 6 to 7 point font. If you can't get 10, at least 6 or 7, just to give it a little bit of breathing room. So I don't think that this is one position kind of just running constantly together. Right. Other than that, I'm not really mad at anything other than there's now some technical skills that are over here. So you've got some skills here on this page, and then you've got some technical skills down at the bottom. We may not make it to the bottom of their resume. So anything that is relevant, to the job, because you've got a bunch of things, Taleo, iCIMS, JobVite, PeopleSoft, HRS, you've got all these relevant systems that you have experience with, but I may not know that if I don't make it to the second page of your resume. So never assume that the reader of your resume is going to make it to the second page. Because if you bore them to death on the first page, I'm not going to the second page. Right. So make sure all of your most relevant information goes on the first page of your resume. Now, education could be highly relevant, but if you have experience, then your education is going to take a back seat to your experience. That's about all I got. What else did you see, Nathan?
Yeah, go back to the first page. So this has always been a pet peeve of mine. I don't know how you feel about it, but I don't like to put acronyms or anything on the name. Now, I don't know if that affects.
Up here at Ayers.
Yeah. Like, I've seen,
that's
what
I meant. Yeah. Those certifications and stuff that you have, everything don't go. Everything doesn't belong there. But this would be appropriate.
Yeah. What do you feel about, does that impact when the resume is parsed? Can that data get into the name field and jack up anything internally if they got those things after the name?
So it can, when the ATS parses the information from the resume, it means that it's extracting. You're saying, oh, this looks like contact information. It looks like a name, phone number, and all that. So I'm going to pull this over. Errors can become part of your name. But even if you have the simplest of resume, it still can give you trouble with parsing the information correctly into the right field. So just when your information is parsed, you have to slow down and make sure that you're reviewing the information to see whether or not everything is going in the right place. And so you may have to delete errors. So it may be beneficial to where you have the headers that says operational excellence and whatever, maybe say AIRS certified instead of putting it in your name. That's another alternative, but it's just, it just really depends on what system, because all ATSs are different and maybe set up different. So they may parse differently, but that is a good point, Nathan.
Okay. Yeah. And then another thing, it is kind of busy. I'm seeing a lot of like, for instance, in those 3 boxes, you got strategic HR management and some things under that. Employee engagement experience, things on that, talent acquisition and development, but those don't align with the competencies above or below the contact information. Because up above, we got, if you scroll up a little bit, we got operational HR excellence, leadership collaboration, talent assessment and benchmarking. So I'm like, okay, I'm trying to connect the dots, and some of this is not connecting for me. And then in the boxes, you got HR policy formulation, people management. So I'm trying to say, okay, what's the theme? I think repetition is not a bad thing, but now I'm like, it's like all over the place for me. It's a lot of different competencies, and it's hard to connect the dots for me.
And I think what happened here is that this person is a recruiter who is trying to shift over into HR to be an HR business partner, potentially. And so they're listing all of the competencies and trying to get all of the keywords, right?
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily mad at that as long as they align. Now, if we had stuff that was talking about communications and marketing, we talking about IT, infrastructure, then I'm like, wait a second. But me getting this resume for an HR person, I'm not really mad at at all the different competencies. I just would like to see it streamlined into something that really matters for the particular position instead of just doing everything and trying to create a catch-all resume so that you don't have to make any updates to it when you apply.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't have any problem with anything else you said. I'd love to move the skills to the first page too, instead of being the last thing on the back of the resume. And we talk about this all the time, focusing on the accomplishments, challenge, action, results. Try to tie the bullet points to some sort of result. Otherwise, I'm like, why is that important? So don't use job description duties as a bullet point, trying to make it an accomplishment without any kind of result.
Exactly. And I saw that theme kind of throughout this resume. So I think it, that's definitely a good point. Overall, I mean, it's a decent, a really decent resume. I'm not mad. But there are some things that you can do to make it visually, more enticing. And then also, again, starting out your first line of your resume with a bang. Because if you got all this experience and you want people to, to know that like you're the it girl, it guy, or whatever, make sure that it pulls them in and you're not describing yourself like somebody else is just describing themselves like whatever. Like you need to be unique. Like that's why it's your unique value proposition.
That's right.
So I make sure that you put your questions in the chat because we will be addressing questions along the way. Somebody did ask, how do you submit your resume for review? We are going to share that at the end of the presentation, so make sure that you stay to the end. Right now we are slam packed with a whole lot of resumes, so we are not accepting a whole lot of resumes right at this moment, but we will share with you how you can share it with us going forward. Okay, so sit tight. All right, here. Oops. All right. So this is the next resume. You got it.
All right. Right off the bat, my pet peeve is if we trickle it on to the second page, let's reformat and try to get one page. That's you either got to do one or the other. You got to increase your font size to give me a page and a half, or reformat this thing so we can get to one page, because that little bit on the end just kind of bothers me. So that's a formatting thing. Specialties, that white space at the top is like a waste of space for me. So we got event strategy, experiential, virtual events, project management. Just from a formatting standpoint, that could probably be formatted to free up space. So the target says events and account management. Okay. Education. So I'm assuming, I don't see dates, but I'm assuming the education was more recent. That's why they got it up at the top as opposed to at the end. Experience. Now everything's in our bullets. We talked about this last time. Putting everything in our bullets. I think we both have the same pet peeve.
Yeah.
Nothing stands out. So I like to break up information into, like we saw before, the little paragraph is what I call a position description, where high level you're describing the role to someone. If someone asks you, what did you do? Try to, in 3 to 5 sentences, describe that role. Talking about budgets, people you manage, kind of day-to-day tasks. And then the bullet points, we like to reserve those for your accomplishments, things, challenge, actions, and results. So if I look at this, that first job, developing event strategy and execute on-site at summits for a nonprofit client age options. That's like a duty. And then it's sort of, I guess because it's present, is written in first or in present tense, but planning meetings, creating SOWs, managing event budgets, that's all like job description stuff. I don't see any accomplishments in this first section for that first job. Jumping to the second job, serve as main liaison. That's like a job description. Develop creative briefs and plan logistics for the Home Depot's HBCU Awards event. Okay, we're kind of getting there, but what was the result? Why is it important? What was the impact? So this resume could use a lot of help with the accomplishment piece, because accomplishments are what help you stand out from the competition. If you're just listing job duties and responsibilities, you don't look any different than anyone else in your field. So you got to challenge yourself. Say, okay, why are these things important? What's the impact? And it's not always, it doesn't always have to be a dollar impact or a quantity impact, but what were the results? What did you improve? Did you help the company make money, save money? Did you develop processes? Did you train people? What was the impact of the things you did? And that'll help the resume stand out as well. I'm looking at dates. Dates look okay.
Do I need to make this bigger too for you to see?
What was that?
And I was asking if I needed to kind of make it a little bigger.
That's good. Yeah. It's reverse chronological, but what's missing is a lot of results that are missing. I mean, this third job, experiential supervisor, develop in-depth event plans and calendars. Okay. Why is that important? Negotiated vendor and event contracts. Why is that important? I need a result.
So much of the story is missing here.
Yeah, it's a lot missing. These are just actions with no, backstory on a challenge and no resulting impact. If you can add at least the impact piece, why it's important piece, it would convert these into accomplishments and make them stand out. Otherwise, I'm just reading things just actions you took without. Yeah. I have to assume an impact. Otherwise, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. And for me, like the dead giveaway that in that first position that they've copied and pasted properly their job description is the tense.
ING.
Yeah, ING. Yeah. So the subject that is understood for a resume is I. So it would not be grammatically correct to say I developing event strategy, I planning meetings, you know. So it's in present tense. So develop event strategy, plan meetings, create. It's those things. But again, the bullets should not be the task. And then there's so many missed opportunities to go further into detail. So managing event budgets of how much, how many events, how big of a budget is an annual budget, is an operations budget. What are you doing with that budget? Are you forecasting? Are you doing accounts payable and receivable for what is it that you're doing? One thing I do know, when I recruited for events positions that were responsible for a lot of high level special events or multi-event setups and things like that, the logistics of it all mattered. So when did you work with vendors? How many vendors did you work with? Did you participate in the vendor selection process for those events? What was the outcome? Were you supposed to be raising money when it came for these events? Were these events supposed to draw in or tie into that company's revenue somehow? There's so many opportunities. What is it supposed to build relationships, help you expand into new markets? What was the point of managing those events? And then also saying that you're a project manager, yet I'm not seeing any projects whatsoever here, even though the events themselves are projects. But when I hear somebody say that they're a project manager, I'm looking for project manager language, like timelines. I'm looking for budgets. I'm looking for cross-functional teams. I'm looking for you're doing a lot of forecasting, that you are negotiating contracts that of a certain amount. I'm looking at you're tracking those milestones. You are tracking performance and keeping up with that, and you're reporting back to leadership so they can make decisions about certain things. That you're solving problems. You're putting fires out. You're doing all of those things. Not copying and pasting from your job description, because you're not giving yourself enough credit for the things that you're actually doing, because you say that there are sponsorships and partnerships that you are, really good at. Okay. How many sponsors did you bring on? What did the sponsors, actually bring to the organization? Like, why did you need those sponsors? What benefit were they to the organization? If you had partnerships, what were you able to accomplish because of those partnerships? Or how did you engage those partnerships? Were you responsible for bringing those partnerships on board through something that you did? And so if this person is going into, account management, I'm not seeing the number of accounts. I'm not seeing any type of portfolio. I would not hire this person for an account management position, especially them having been a director before, but still not telling me how many people they supervised, also not telling me how many accounts they managed and what that portfolio was worth, not telling me the types of accounts that they managed, not telling me anything that they did to bring in new business, to manage those new accounts, to do all of these things. I'm missing all of the details that would make me, want to call somebody with this type of experience, even for events. I'm not seeing a reason why I would want to call this person to have them run my events.
Yeah, I got two options for this person, and they're the easy way and the pay way. Pay a professional resume writer so you can sit down with them and they can ask the hard questions to develop a better resume for you. Or, I mean, the do-it-yourself way. One way you can use with AI, you could feed these bullet points in the AI and say, look, here's some of my bullet points from my resume. Ask me some detailed questions about these bullet points so I can give you feedback so we can, refine these bullet points. And, you can collaborate and answer questions. AI can ask you back and forth, ask you, what did you do with this? What did you do with that? And you can answer, and it can help refine these bullet points. That's going to take a while. Or you can just, pay for a professional resume writer, and they can sit down with you and go through this with you and ask questions and help refine this resume. Because right here, this is, nothing stands out. You're not distinguishing yourself.
Right. Let's take a couple questions. So I have a question from Sharita. She said, should resumes be only 2 pages and the last 10 years of experience? So I'll take a stab at this first and then you give your take. So my rule of thumb is that the length of your resume is far less important than the content within your resume. So if your resume has trash content, a paragraph is too long. All right. But if you're looking at, generally speaking, most resumes for somebody who has at least 10 years of experience is going to be 2 pages. You may have a 1-page resume. You may have a 2-page resume. You may even have a 3-page resume. But it has to make sense for what you're doing. So stretching your resume out, for this instance, this resume is 2 pages long, but it really not.
Yeah.
It's submitted as 2 pages, but it really could be a 1-page resume, but that is because they have not included enough information to make it a 2-page resume. But if, like Nathan said, if you get with a resume writer, because I'm going to ask you everything down to what you did in kindergarten to make sure that we're not leaving anything out, right? That's an exaggeration. Y'all chill out. But I'm going to ask you everything. I'm getting all up and down and through your business to find out what it is that you did, because everybody offers value some type of way. So the first thing you have to focus on is how much value are you adding with the information that you're including. If you're finding that the information is becoming redundant, it's old, it's outdated, then you probably can cut your resume off to 2 pages, right? You may even be able to cut it off to that 1 page, but generally speaking, resumes are anywhere from 1 to 3 pages. So you might have an entry-level person or somebody who's been at the same company for forever and a day. They may have a 1-page resume. Then you have someone who, has 10, 15 years of experience. They may have a 2-page resume. You may have an executive or somebody who's done a lot of project work. They may have a 3-page resume. But no matter how long your resume is, your content has to be relevant and it has to be impactful.
Yeah, I agree with all that, Ashley. 2 pages is pretty standard for me. I've done 3 and 4 on limited occasions. A lot of times people in academia, professors and whatnot, they'll have longer resumes or they call them, CVs, because they have a lot of their research on there or books they've written, conferences they've spoken at, publications. So those tend to be longer, and they like it. They want to be, I guess for them, the longer the better. And they want to kind of pride themselves on having a long resume. But for people not in academia, 2 pages pretty standard. 1 page, a lot of times for career changes, if you're changing careers and you don't have a lot of experience in this new career, you may go from having a 2-page to a 1-page because you're sort of only focusing on the content that's relevant to this career change. Folks right out of school are going to have a 1-page resume. As far as experience, it depends on what type of job you're applying for. If you had a 20-year career in one field and you're changing careers, maybe you don't focus so much on the early part of your career. So the experience piece, it really starts out, what's your job target? And that kind of will define how long the resume is going to be, how much experience you want to show. If you're not applying for like director or above level job and you got 30 years of experience and you're applying for like a mid-level manager, we could probably go with the last 15 to 20 and be okay. Because no, I don't know if anyone's going to ask you, well, what I see here you were this in 1990. Okay, they're not going to be asking
Right.
that. I mean, that's
Yeah.
way too far back. So, most times, 10 to 15 years, depending on, but it really, there's no solid answer. That's really the real answer. It depends on
Yeah.
the job target, what your goal is, and your resume writer that you work with can sit down with you and help hash out how far we need to go back.
Yep. And then how to even position those older jobs, because just because they're old doesn't mean you can't talk about what you did in those jobs at all. It's just that they don't need a whole lot of playing time. They're taking up valuable space that you can be putting more recent information or a more recent selling point. Let's go to another question. Okay, so can you clarify the preferred format for ATS, Word or PDF? The company is going to tell you that. So whenever you apply in an ATS, it will tell you what the preferred formats are. If there is no preferred format, I always try to do a PDF, because when you send a Word document to somebody, if they have a different version of Word than you have, or they haven't done an update or or whatever, your formatting may be off just a little bit. When they open the document, it may be what is a 2-page resume for you may end up being 3 pages for them because something got, kind of pushed off. So a PDF is going to preserve that formatting, for that resume. But typically within that ATS, it will tell you the acceptable formats for your document. I've not seen one that didn't.
I remember like maybe 10 years ago or so, we were advocating plain text, just everything in text. Has that come and gone? Is a plain text resume even a thing anymore? Do folks need to focus on or be concerned with having a plain text resume?
Yeah. So when I recommend a plain text resume, is really to show somebody that their resume probably will not be parsed. The information probably won't be parsed in the ATS or any system for that matter correctly. So we want to check it to make sure that nothing gets jumbled up, or that, nothing gets, the numbers don't turn into symbols and, and stuff like that, especially if you're doing any amount of formatting or graphics or anything like that, to a resume. So I try, say simple is always going to be best. It needs to be a very simple, clean layout. And you can use color and some design elements to, draw attention to certain things. But I'm a certified resume writer, so I can do stuff like that. If you don't have any training in writing resumes, just stick to the basics and make sure you have a clean, very professional document. But using a plain text, like I used to give my clients a plain text document along with the Word and PDF, but just with the upgrades and updates or whatever in ATS is really not necessary. But if somebody asked me for one, I typically would throw one in, to a with the service, just because it's easy, or may show them how to create that plain text document on their own. Is a good thing to have and good thing to know how to do, because you can kind of check yourself. But it's becoming less and less necessary because of the upgrades with the ATS.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I think so. So this person said, can you take one of the bullet points that is a job duty and give an example of an accomplishment or a result? Let's do that real quick. So here's a bullet here that is a duty. So researching and securing venues, right? So I would ask, so what? Like, why is it important for you to do that? So what this person could say is that they saved $50,000 by researching and securing venues that offered a 7-day trial, or maybe they offer some sort of discount for the type of business that you are. That would be an accomplishment versus a task. The task is just what you're doing. The accomplishment is the impact, the change that you made. Excuse me, whether positive or or whatever. Another one, building marketing emails to promote events. Okay, so grew event participation 30% by building marketing emails and distributing to 2,500 members. That would be an accomplishment bullet.
And actually, even if you don't know it was 30%, you can say, grew, whatever you said, just leave out the percentage if you don't know it. And it's still an accomplishment. And for everyone that's maybe confused by this, what we're doing is we're talking about, you can Google it, challenge, action, result, the CAR process for resume writing. And Google there's plenty of articles out there how you write those, but it's really using either the PAR, problem, action, result, or the CAR, challenge, action, result format. And that'll help you with your bullet point writing.
Yep. And this is a great question from William. Have you been seeing candidates with better than normal resumes still struggling in this job market, wondering if the quality of the resume or job market conditions are bigger variables? Yeah. So the thing is, William, recruiters and hiring managers, really at the end of the day, we don't care what your resume looks like. It could be pretty as all the most beautiful resume we've ever seen. If you are not talking to us about the problem that you solve and the relevant things that we need to know for you to be able to do that job successfully, then it's not a good resume. But there are people who have resumes and they, they'll book, consults with me. I need a resume. I'm not getting any interviews or whatever. And then I look at the resume, compare it to the job that they're targeting, much like we're doing these resumes kind of, but more on an in-depth basis. And I'm not seeing a reason why they wouldn't be, contacted for an interview. So sometimes it is not your resume, but it is not a bad idea ever to check with a professional to make sure that it's not your resume. Don't just assume because you think your resume is good, because your resume is only good as the results that you're getting with it. However, there are other factors. There are the things that you need to be doing besides just applying for positions online. You need to be networking. You need to be reaching out to people who can impact decisions. Those decisions, excuse me, those decisions go well beyond just the recruiter and the hiring manager. So those are like the two go-tos that everybody reaches out to when there is an opening, but those people get bombarded. If there's thousands of people applying to the same jobs, then those are thousands of people that are reaching out to the same people. Reach out to Bob in accounting. He has a relationship with somebody. Somebody else may work in maintenance. Somebody else may work in IT. It depends on, the company, how they can influence people. Right. So all you need is an inside contact, somebody to put their stamp of approval on you, somebody that can get your information in front of the hiring manager. So a lot of people are not doing that because they're saying, I don't know anybody. These people don't know me. They're getting rid of, they're ignoring me, whatever. That's because you're not saying anything worth saying. You're reaching out to them and say, hey, what jobs y'all got? Yeah. That's what, I can't tell you how many emails that I get emails right now today for people asking me to, share their resume with my company to get them a job. I'm not a recruiter anymore. I haven't been a recruiter for over a year now, but that's because you're not reading. So there's no business why you should be sending me, no reason why you send me information saying that you want to apply for, a software developer position, right? So resumes is me. Okay. So you shouldn't be doing that. So you have to read a lot of things. So sometimes people are not responding to your messages because of what you're either saying or what you're not saying. But this market is crazier than anything that I've seen since I started recruiting in 2003. Right. And so to answer, your question, more straightforwardly, yes, people who have great resumes are still struggling to get interviews. It's because they are also sometimes they are not doing other things to help get their information in front of the right people, right? So they're applying online. They're, doing the easy apply on LinkedIn. To me, that's the worst thing that you could do is do the easy apply because everybody's going to take the easy route. Take the road less traveled when you are trying to get the attention of somebody that can change your life.
Yeah. I'll say it like this, even the best resumes sometimes don't get seen. And I don't, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, Ashley. Tell me if I'm wrong on this. I don't know that companies, if they get 100 resumes, they're not looking to try to find out the number one resume in that pile. If they going through and they get the first 10 or 20 they look at it, we got 20 good resumes. Let's interview these 20 people, and the other 80 may not even get a look.
Right. And you
had a good 20 in the first pile.
Yep. You can close that posting. And then, because it happened to me all the time, where I would, open a position, one day, get back to work the next day. And then I've got, 100, 200 resumes, right? I have to, once I figure like, okay, I have a good enough pile, I can close that requisition. So that's how positions get open. And then an hour later, a day later, whatever the case may be, and it's closed, it's gone. So it does help to be the early bird. And you have to tailor and target those resumes. But the reason why I think some people are struggling to even get those resumes in, very quickly when they see the opportunities is because they're applying for this over here, they're applying for that over here, and they're all different things. And so you're having to do too much to that resume to change it. If your resume is, if it's effectively targeted, you should not have to do a lot of things to it in order to apply for a job that's within that target.
Yeah.
Okay. Because tailoring and targeting are two different things. A job target would be accounting. Okay. Your resume is an accounting resume, so it is targeted for accounting roles, but it needs to be tailored to a specific job posting.
Yeah.
Okay. So that, so that's why it's different. So the keywords are for the actual job target. That's why you cannot rely on just the job posting to tell you what keywords you need. It's a job target. You look at those, what those keywords are, and then the job posting itself is going to have keywords as well. So when I'm teaching my clients how to keyword optimize their resumes, I'm showing them what I would be looking for in general for this type of position, not just for this posting, because each company is going to want something a little bit different. So that's where the tailoring comes in. But when you're targeting, you're looking at this type of position should have this type of experience, this type of skills, this type of systems, all that. That's what targeting is. So yeah, there are people that are doing kind of everything right and they are still struggling. So yep, that does happen. Let's see. Okay, so Marquita says, initially I had only 2 jobs, but I performed many roles. Sometimes I find it hard to list the roles because I was not paid for each one. Instead, it was on the job training. You list it within the experience. You don't have to separate it. I'm not really sure about your specific, situation, but paid or not, if you did the thing and it's relevant to, the job that you're applying to now, list it on your resume.
Yeah, that's what I agree. I mean, it doesn't have to be paid. If you had experience, it's experience.
Yeah. So yeah. Let's see here. Thank you. You're welcome, Marquita. And she said about sending out a rustic resume. Girl, I hire people with ugly resumes all the time. All the time. Rustic, it does not matter. It could be just the simplest, just black and white resume that you typed out with just very basic formatting. As long as you show me the qualifications, you meet those qualifications, you have that success that's relevant to that job, you can get an interview.
Yeah.
You can get an interview.
A pretty resume with bad content is going to lose out over a blah resume that has, it's all about the content. It's the content. Yes. It's the accomplishments, what stands out, how you separate yourself.
Yep. Content is king or queen, however you want to look at that. All right, moving right along. Because I literally could do this all day. All right. So we got an operations specialist. Again, bullets everywhere. Y'all love these bullets. Y'all have more bullets than a drive-by on these resumes. Okay. So all right, so we've got this. So I want to start at the top of this resume. So everything, looks good on the surface as far as the, the layout of the contact information, but do not put the title of your resume in your contact information, because that creates issues within, with the parsing. Operations specialist becomes part of your name. So I would move that before, where you have, again, didn't somebody else say they were dynamic?
Results
oriented. See, this is exactly what we're talking about. Yeah. Everybody is using these same overused phrases. So get rid of dynamic, get rid of results oriented. You got 10 years of experience streamlining processes and enhancing customer experiences. That is the value that you bring. Find another way to get to it, because if I can't. Dynamic and results oriented, all y'all think you do the same thing. Find another way to say this is more authentic and more unique to you. Team leadership, again, supervision, fostering a collaborative environment, prioritizing excellence and productivity. A lot of times too, like when you use systems like ChatGPT to write your resume, they use a lot of these overused buzzwords and stuff too. That's why you have to be careful, and you can't
skilled, adept, proficient, passionate. I think I saw that in the last one. Yeah. I'm not a fan anymore of the little paragraph. I kind of skip over them.
Because they all have buzzwords in them like this.
Yeah. So I would try to tighten it up a little bit and take out the fluff, take out the common words.
Yep. And then with the experience, part of it, everything is laid out the way that it should be laid out. However, the you need an actual description. And again, I know that it's a copy and paste of the job description, and you've kind of plugged in some things that may be, that may be unique to you, because everything ends in S. Okay. Again, the
Coordinate.
subject line is I. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't be I coordinates, it's coordinate over 20
Coordinate.
simultaneous projects. And then anytime you have the phrase resulting in, that means that is an accomplishment that you have not front loaded. Front loading your accomplishments means that you're going to switch that car, the challenge, the action, and the result. You're going to flip that and make it rack. Or if you're using PAR, I work with my clients on PAR, which is the problem, the action, and the result. We flip that and we call it wrap. So you start with your results first, and then the action and problem that you fixed. Okay. So this actually should be improved on-time approvals, 37%, and boosted stakeholder satisfaction while coordinating over 20 simultaneous licensing projects. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This other stuff that we have here through product launches and collaborations, like you can find a way to kind of fit that in there, and everything to make it better. So it can be simultaneous licensing projects, product launches, and brand collaborations, right? You can put all those things together. But the big thing that you want people to see, like they shouldn't have to swim through the bullet to figure out where the success is. The success should be right there at the front.
Yeah.
Improved on-time approvals, 37%. And then tell me how you did it. So give me what you did, what the result was, and then tell me how you did it. So that lets me know that should be rewritten, but you also have to take some of these tasks and make them give a description of your job and what you were hired to do. And then your bullets are showing the success you've had in doing those things. Okay. So if I get down, so that's basically the story to the rest of these positions. Same issues. Also be careful how you start your sentences off. So I'm seeing a couple of them with provided, managed, assisted.
Mm-hmm.
Your thesaurus is going to be your best friend.
Yeah.
And also when you start front loading your achievements the way that you're supposed to front load, you'll find that the action verb that you need to begin your bullet with to start with is already built into that. But it always should be action. Provided is not action. Assisted can be to a point, but I'd rather you tell me that you played a key role in something versus you assisted or helped. That lets me know that, you had, it really kind of gives lower level when you use those types of terms. I do like supported as a better word, but use a thesaurus. Find a better way to, to be able to say something. And then you've got your additional experience here. Again, if this additional experience is relevant, leave it. If it is not, you may be able to let it go. I think for timing wise, since it was 2019, that was just kind of 5 years ago, that you did this. I'm not mad at you having these positions here. I'm more concerned about all these bullets when it should be just a description under there, and then maybe no more than 5 to 6 bullets under each position. And you'll have fewer as you go back. So you may have 5 or 6. Then you got 3, 2, maybe 1, or none at your older jobs. Anything else you want to add, Nathan?
Yeah. Now, of course, we're reviewing this on the fly, so we didn't have time to dig into it a lot. But
right.
Areas of expertise.
Wait a minute.
Oh.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, areas of expertise. So if I go back to the top, things like written and verbal communication. Well, we hope so. So delete that.
Yeah. Those are soft
time management. We hope so. Delete that. So some of these are sort of, we would hope you have that skill. So there's not an area of expertise, so to speak.
Yeah.
But also, things like operations management, process improvement, stakeholder management. If these are areas of expertise, and if we dug through this resume, we'd hope we'd see some evidence of these areas of expertise.
Well, we see the process improvement that's in this first bullet right here. So I like that. So that's what we mean when we say if you list something as your area of expertise here,
show me.
You better back it up in the rest of your resume.
Right. Don't just put keywords there or areas of expertise.
Yeah.
You can't have any areas of that you're showing that you've done that.
Right, because that's called keyword stuffing when you do that. When you just put the keywords there just for the hell of it, or just for you to be able to have it where you quote unquote beat the ATS when there's no such thing as beating the ATS. Then we don't see any evidence of what you've done. That's why I don't like results oriented, because you put results oriented, but where are your results? I'm seeing, you know, 1 or 2 results here or there.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not results oriented. And then you know, some people will put detail oriented, but then they have typos. You're not detail oriented if you, you know, if that's what you're doing. But don't fill up your resume with soft skills like communication, listening skills, time management, prioritization, you know, those types of things. It's a wasted space, because we are going to gauge that when we're interviewing you, when we're assessing your performance and the stories that you're telling throughout your resume. We can gauge those things. If you've built partnerships, sent out marketing emails that actually drew you know, new business and stuff like that, then I'm going to assume that you've got good written communication skills.
Mm-hmm.
That comes with the territory. So I wouldn't, you know, focus so much on, you know, on those things. But that's about it, you know, for this one.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go to the next. All right, we got somebody targeting data engineering, a data engineering leadership position.
Okay. I think I'm up. Let's see.
Let me blow this up. This is a doozy. There's a lot of stuff here.
Okay. Yeah, so that same coming out, yeah, I think I like what you're saying there about like that title, Aspiring Director of Data Engineering. That's in the contact section, so I'd probably bring that down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, get it out of the contact section. The summary is in bullet points, so it makes it easier to read. But you still got, you know, highly accomplished and results driven.
Those are buzzwords.
Buzzwords.
Find another way to describe yourself, and also be careful with this 20+ years.
Yeah, that can work, you know, against you sometimes, depending on what role you're applying for. Because if you're not applying for a role that can take advantage of that 20 years experience, you might be seen as overqualified, or, you know, i.e. old, you know, by some people. So, all right, so experience. Let's see. Got the role title. I like the little blurb about the company, leading as a global team. So this is what we'd like to see. That little blurb. There's the position description where you're describing the role.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to kind of read through and say what's the role about, and then this person's also broken up their experience or their accomplishments into different functional categories.
So right. Which I like this, especially since there's so much information.
Yeah, that makes it easier to digest when you got them in functional categories.
Yeah.
I personally like to end my bullets in periods, but I tell people pick one or the other. So this person chose not to, which is fine. They're consistent and not having periods at the end, so that's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like periods are necessary. So I don't really give my clients a choice when it comes down to those periods, because to me, your resume is a written professional document. You wouldn't send an email to somebody without periods, right? You also wouldn't write a professional document, you know, for work without periods, and you wouldn't end a sentence without a period. So your resume has sentences on it.
Yeah. I think some people
say, but I do like the consistency. I say if you're going to break the rule and not do it,
I always use periods. But yeah, if I see a resume or someone doesn't have, I say, well, okay, it's a bullet point. But yeah, I tend to lean like you do. I like to have periods to end too. Mm-hmm. Now I will say that this is one job, right? So it's broken up, but that is a lot of information. And then we got
a lot of information. Yeah,
those last 2 bullets are down there need to be consistent with the rest of them. But yeah. I mean, they did try to break it up with the functional skills, but that's a lot of stuff going on for that one job. And it was only 5 years.
Yeah.
That's a lot of stuff going on.
Another thing I see too is, so they're saying that they're applying for a data engineering leader job, but you don't start talking about data engineering until here. And you got you know, so I feel like some of these categories are maybe out of order.
Yeah.
With where they should be, because if you're targeting data engineering and you're telling me that you are the direct, you know, the manager or senior manager of engineering, I'm going to want to see the data engineering stuff kind of a little higher than this. Even though I know leadership is important, but it's going to depend though on what is the job opportunity talking about. Is it focusing more so on leadership? Then this would be correct in the correct order to focus more so on, on the leadership aspects of it versus, the actual data engineering stuff. But again, like this one, streamline ticket support for legacy platform, reduced resolution time 37%, despite a 39% increase in volume. So you see how this is way down at the bottom. I'm probably not going to see that.
Yeah.
Because I'm scanning the document really quickly, trying to, make sure that you meet the, the qualifications. So just make sure that if you are using this type of format, that you are formatting it or ordering them in order of importance and relevancy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a little.
I think it's a solid resume though.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely one of the better ones we've seen. I'd probably challenge to say, okay, what can we challenge yourself to pick out some of these bullet points that may be a little less relevant because it is a long section. I mean, it's just 2 jobs, and they got additional experience on the second page, and we go back to 03, which I get. I mean, they're not providing. Yeah, I don't know that there's any need to provide dates, to be honest, because now we can just do the math.
Right.
Well, they're all going for a director level role, so
yeah,
that's 15 to 20 years for a director. So I think we're okay there.
Yeah.
The technical skills, core skills.
I think that should be on that first page.
The first page, but do we need to separate them? I mean, what's the difference between technical and core? I mean, I guess
because technical is the systems part of it. So because they're engineered, they're going to have, experience with more of the, systems, and stuff. And so I see this too. Like we had a previous resume that was talent attraction or talent acquisition too, that had a lot of systems on there. There were a lot of ATS, a lot of HRS, those types of systems. So for data engineering in that space, I would say it's necessary to have it. I just wouldn't list it this way. I would put it under the core skills, but I would just list it as that it's systems and then put a colon and then list out the systems and not just give it its own section. And it definitely would not be on page 2. Not at the bottom of page 2.
No, I like the skills because that's one of the first things people look for, right? They have in their mind skills they're looking for. So they're scanning through, and you're right, they may not get to the second page to see, oh, you do have these skills. So I put those front and center.
Right.
Yeah.
And I like that they were consistent when it came to the, the competencies that they focused on, here too. But I would just like to see it more, just written more concisely, because I'm almost willing to bet that quite a few of these bullets are not relevant to where they're headed. Yep. Okay. All right. Moving right along. Let me see if we got any additional questions. I think we're good. Okay, I think they are talking amongst themselves. So we are good. All right, here's a resume. Engineering. So this is a software engineer. I do like that the software engineer is under the under the contact information. But I'm going to tell you, when something is really little in italics, it's an afterthought. It means like, hey, this is, this is some information you might need, but you may not. So I'm just gonna make it little. I'm not gonna say it too loud. No, you want people to know right away that you're a software engineer. And this comes off as really like, I'm not confident, really. So I'm a software engineer. That's what it's given to me.
Bold.
Yeah. So, and then there's software engineer with a year of experience. So that may explain why they're not just out there. Because they're trying to feel their way. Okay. But with 1 year of experience, they optimize system performance. They're proficient in agile, methodologies. Be careful with the tense. Again, pretend that you also have I there. So it wouldn't be I demonstrates.
Never ES. Never ES.
Yep. So it'll always be demonstrate. So demonstrate a keen ability to troubleshoot and debug complex. I'm not mad at this professional summary at all. I think it's really good for the level of position that this is. But again, there's too many bullets here, and a lot of these bullets are also tasks. They're not accomplishments. I would also like to see a more modern font that isn't so small and isn't Times New Roman's cousin. Because
Yeah.
Times New Roman is kind of like the Jerry curl of fonts. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
That's
so
right.
it's kind of played out. It's out there. Some people still try to bring that Jerry curl on back, but we just let them know that Jerry curl is out of style. So again, if I had to guess, this will be Garamond font. I think this is Garamond. So Garamond is a smaller font than, say, your Calibri or Calibri, however you say that, or Arial. And so you have to be careful with the font size. And because this is such a tiny font on its own, it's okay to up the font. So I probably will pull this up to maybe an 11 or 12 or something, because it does seem, kind of small. And then even for somebody that was an intern in 2023, this old lady, old man font, I need you to be more modern.
That's right.
When it comes to the fonts, because that will help it be easy, easy to read. Easier to read. And then let's see, still, like I said, the accomplishments. But I do like that they have these accomplishment bullets, but I don't have a general overview of what they were, what they were brought on to do. What were you hired to do? What was the challenge that you faced? I do like that they listed that they graduated with honors. Yeah, they listed their languages. So, they speak French. I think that's awesome. Like, overall, it's a decent resume, but you see there's a difference in the font though, right? So there's a font here that's in the professional summary section. And then there's a different font that's in the employment history. So just be consistent when you got these fonts, because it does make things look, kind of disjointed when we don't, when we bounce too far, back and forth with these fonts. But yeah, that's about all that I have for this one. I would want to beef up this, the skills section to talk more about things that are relevant to software engineering. So maybe it was application development. Maybe it was, working with directories, or excuse me, with doing protocols, or things like that. Testing, right? System testing. If you were doing stuff like that, then I would like to see those listed as skills, not necessarily just your technical. Don't focus only on your technical. Give me some of those competencies as well.
Yeah, just a minor grammatical thing in the skills section. It's like 2 commas following SQL. That's like a little typo.
Yeah.
And then they got
Visual Studio too.
Yeah, Visual Studio. Then they got a period at the end of problem solving. It's probably no need. It's not a sentence, but just like that's just minor things there as far as grammatics. Word, Excel should be Word, comma, Excel, comma, PowerPoint, comma. Yeah. So it's some typos there. And those are things that as resume writers, they kind of jump out at us. But
again, we're reviewing this, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to not hire somebody because they didn't put it somewhere. And then I know this is probably just a language thing, but be careful with the SING, because in standard US English, it's going to be ZING, so it can come across as a typo.
Yeah. And then of course French should be capitalized down at the bottom.
Right? Yep. And we got just a couple more same things. So this one is targeting curriculum specialists and English language arts. It's just the same. It's the same deal as these other resumes.
Yeah, we got some font inconsistencies, boy. That first job is like, bam, jumps out at you.
Right.
It's like some all caps there that probably shouldn't be there. That was cut and pasted from somewhere.
Yeah. It was pulled. Yeah, it looks like it was pulled maybe from a curriculum or something. But again, it's a position there, but I don't know what you did. Like, what does any of that mean? You have to assume that the person that is reading your resume, 9 times out of 10, they're probably not in your same field. So you probably don't need to, you need to speak in a language that they understand. And so I wouldn't understand why this is even relevant. So if you're a scoring assistant, talk about what you did as a scoring assistant. What did you do?
Yeah. Okay.
But just the same, I would say the same thing, not putting
Hmm.
the information, not giving a description of the job, and then the bullet point should always be accomplishments.
Yeah. Now,
Mm,
see, this is one person that violated our rule with the periods, non-periods. That Florida educator, the first two sentences have periods. That's the first three, and the last two don't. So you got to choose
mhm.
one, either
Yep,
no periods or all periods. But you can't
pick a lane.
when you cross both. He's like, okay, was that was a mistake?
Pick a lane.
Sure. Yeah.
We've got a couple more resumes here. I got time. If y'all have time, it's just a few, just a few more that we want to go through, but I want to catch
Okay.
some of these questions.
Okay.
So William asked again, should you be tailoring each resume to each job posting, quality over quantity? Absolutely. Yes. If your resume is targeted and you're applying to the same the same types of jobs, you shouldn't have to do a whole lot by way of tailoring. If you're feeling like you're having to rewrite your resume every time you apply for a job, that means you have not picked a lane. You have not picked a
Yeah.
target. That means your target is too broad. You need to narrow down to a specific thing so you can do that quality over quantity. So yes, I would agree for that.
Hmm.
Okay, good, Carla. And let's see, we've got another question. Yeah, so I like to use the pipe bar. Yes, I like to use that as
Yep.
well. That is
I like
that's
that.
how I separate my skills. So yes, I
A
like that.
vertical pipe. Yep.
Yep, I like that. All right. Moving along. But okay, so let me address this. So this person is targeting the curriculum stuff. What I want to see from an educator is how you have put your curriculum together to achieve a certain outcome. I want to see you talking about grades. I want to see you talking about how your students have passed their standard achievement test, how they have if your students have IEPs, how are they progressing within that IEP? Like what shift were they able to make because of your instruction?
Hmm.
Okay. I want to know what programs you developed. I also want to know if it's curriculum, how is your curriculum going to meet me, somebody with an IEP versus, just someone who's not on an IEP? So how are you going to how are you adjusting the content to fit that person? Like are you using the same type of methodology? Are you doing anything to prepare them for testing? Those are the types of things that I want to see from curriculum. Like what's the point of me going through your training if I'm not achieving a certain result? Like
Yeah.
with us here today, we are doing this resume review and training at the same time. And the outcome of that should be that you have a better understanding of what current resume standards are and how you can get your resume up to standard, and then be able to go and implement the changes that we are asking you to implement.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What's listed on that resume is just basic. Well, I won't say basic, but teach your stuff, teach your
Mhm.
duties. I mean,
Yep.
so we need some results. I mean, it's the same thing we've been saying. You really got to stand out. Do the, why does that matter or who cares test. Read your bullet points. So why does that matter? Who cares? And then,
Yeah.
challenge yourself to add more information.
Mhm.
I try to tell my clients, put yourself in the shoes of the hiring manager. You got to impress them and have them pick up the phone or send an email to kind of get you in for an interview. And so you got to separate yourself from the competition.
Yep. And then we got one more question here. I'm currently pursuing my MBA. Where should I list my education? In the education section. It doesn't matter that you're pursuing your MBA now.
And they may
You would go.
mean, they may
I'm saying
mean,
it doesn't matter about the location of it. Put it in your education section.
yeah. Now, in that case, I've done that sometimes where if they got a current experience, current education, sometimes I will move that up to the top as
Yeah.
opposed to keeping it at the end.
And I put it
Sometimes.
as a bullet or as a kind of
In
a
summary,
descriptor, near the summary section where I may say
currently,
MBA, or I
yeah,
may describe them as an MBA candidate.
yeah, hmm.
Yeah. Mhm. All right. But Carla, it really just depends on how relevant that MBA is. How relevant is it to what you're doing? Typically, it will just go in the education section. And that education, if you have relevant, if this is a MBA that you're getting to help you shift into another field, then you want to probably list that at the top of your
Hmm.
resume. But if you currently have an MBA, you have experience in the lane that you're trying to, to go into, it's going to go at the bottom with your regular education, but you just put that you're pursuing whatever, or put your expected graduation date. Yeah. Let's see where we at. Okay. So here's another one. All right. Have at it, Nathan.
Meeting planning. Okay. All right. I hate this. I'm gonna go put it and start at the end. I just caught this education. I flipped those two. I know one's a BA and one's a certification, but date wise, I'd put the 2011 one first, just from a.
I wouldn't put dates, period.
It is going back a little far. I guess you decide. I guess 2011 is what? That's that's 14 years. So
yeah,
man, yeah. So yeah, you can argue to just even take those dates off.
Now, I always put the education first, just because in the systems, the education comes and then they ask for certifications, training, and courses. But in this case, since the certification is so relevant, you can list either.
Yeah, and taking dates off with your suggestion is fine. Yeah,
just leave it. Yeah, leave it as it is. Yeah. But the point you were trying to make is just chronologically.
Yeah.
The certification would go first. Yeah. Just because of the dates it was achieved. Yeah.
All right, let's see. So at the top, there we go. Everybody's results driven.
Results driven. Yeah. Proven track record.
Proven track record. Yeah. Passionate. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just not I'm becoming less and less a fan of the summary piece,
and that's because of these types of mistakes. Yeah. It's not because the summary is not necessary, because the summary should be able to draw somebody in and make them want to hire you. People should be able to read just your summary statement and decide whether or not they want to interview you.
Yeah. Okay.
But if you start me off, you already bored me to death with the same thing that everybody, is saying.
So that first sentence, though, if I read that first sentence, it's a proven track record of optimizing logistics, coordinating high-profile meetings, and supporting executive leadership in those industries. So I'm hoping I'm going to see that as I read through the resume. If that's what the hiring manager is looking for. Okay, they said they're doing this. Let me see examples of it. And then we got the experience.
Yeah.
Okay. So you give a little blurb about the role, how the role.
But I think this is unnecessary, though. This should go in the description of the job. If you put a description under the job, right, you wouldn't need this sentence by itself, right? It would be just part of the description, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you can argue that.
How is this any different from what's being said in the first bullet?
Oh, you mean the bullet below?
Yeah, like this one here, the same information.
Yeah.
So why do we need this?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Okay. I mean, same kind of thing is a lot of actions, but I don't know that I'm seeing a lot of results.
Yeah, they're kind of buried in here, increasing operational efficiency and reducing compliance risks.
So they could lead.
And then improving productivity here. They're talking about a cost saving report, but not saved thousands of dollars. But see, if I'm skimming, I'm not seeing this. Numbers should be numbers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a bunch of accomplishments in here. They're just hidden.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. If they use the lead with your result, like that last bullet point, reduce turnaround time for client deliverables by spearheading process improvements. And maybe you can describe what those process improvements are. Yeah, so they're there, but yeah, you can easily miss them. That next to last bullet, you can lead with increased operational efficiency and reduce compliance risk by establishing and maintaining SOPs.
Right.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, the way it's written, you can easily kind of blur past them and not catch the accomplishment.
Right. And what is thousands of dollars? Is it $2,000 or is it $63,000? Because that's the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Next section, same thing, I guess. The little blurb.
Yep. But I don't like this grouping the roles together, because for one, it causes an issue in the ATS. That's one thing. But then two, if these positions are the same, basically you went from a meetings manager to a senior meetings manager position. I would like to see what you did. I don't know which one of these jobs you're telling me about. Are you trying to tell me that you did all three of these and that's what these bullets align to? I'm not really sure. But how I would have positioned this, I would have lumped these two jobs together, and I would have said that, promoted from manager position, promoted after 1 year, right? And so that covers that job. So boom, I don't even have to talk about that job. I can just talk about two positions, the senior meetings manager position and then the operations and patient support manager, because those sound like different positions. So they should have different listings. The only time I would lump these together, if it was just these two, then I can understand that. But I don't know what a meetings manager has to do with the operations and patient support manager. They sound like two totally different jobs to me.
I agree with you on that one. Now, like, let's say if that operations one was not there, a lot of times people say, hey, I got a promotion, but I did the same job. I went from meetings manager to senior meetings manager, but the job title, the job duties were the same. But I'm interested in your maybe helping the audience understand doing it that way formatically, how that may cause a problem for the ATS if you include both jobs like that.
So the ATS looks at repetition in formatting. So it knows that if you have your name, address, phone number, email address, those are going into the contact information. It probably will skip this, but you're not writing this for the ATS. You're writing this for the human. Okay. That's going to read your resume. That will read your resume. So the ATS is not the only thing that is scanning your resume for keywords, and a human will read your resume. In my 20 years of recruiting, I read resumes. The system did not do that for me. Then I know tons of other recruiters who they read resumes. So don't be fooled by some coach who has never recruited who told you that. Okay. Recruiters are reading resumes. So when I'm looking at this information, right? So I see a company name, a location, a date, and a position. So I am looking for that same structure for every position. So as an ATS, that's how I know where to put information. But if you got this now, you're throwing me off, because now you got a company name, a location, a date, and then you got a position, date, position, date, position, date. Then you jump back over here with the regular format. So that's why I'm saying, like, I can take it for one position, but when you lump three positions and then one of them doesn't seem like it has anything to do with the other, it's confusing for me, even as a human. So I can't imagine how it would confuse the ATS, because it really doesn't know where to, to put this up. And like I said, I don't know what value this line is offering. I'm not sure, because the information is repeated here.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So yeah. But that's what I would say about this this position. There are some good accomplishments, but they definitely need to be front loaded, because they're
I'm not a fan of the spacing. That's just a pet peeve. It's like the space between the bullets is a little much, but
it is a lot of white space. It makes the resume kind of look empty, and it makes it look like you maybe didn't achieve the things that you should. Because I mean, this could have, I don't know, I'm not gonna say one page. It looks like you were trying to stretch it to 2 pages. That's what that looks like to me.
It's a strong page and a half probably, but or page and a third, but okay.
All right, so don't have any questions, so we can go on to the next. All right. And did I move the question? Yeah, I moved the question. Okay. All right, so this one's targeting with finance manager. You want to take this one? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still not a fan of the name, MBA, but that's I'm not gonna get too
again, like I said, MBA to come a dime a dozen now, so it's not necessary to put it up there.
And everybody's dynamic.
Oh my God, everybody's dynamic.
Yeah.
You get a dynamic, you get a results into.
I guess, for the audience, look, if you're gonna write it, I think your takeaway should be just Google overused words in a resume summary section, and stay away from those at all costs. And just write it without those words, and I think you'll be okay.
Right. The
Yeah.
thesaurus all day.
Yeah.
And if you call yourself dynamic, what is dynamic about me? And then once you can figure out what the about me part is, write that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so all of the jobs have a little blurb about what the role entailed, except for that second job. So that just sticks out to me. I mean, every job has like a little bit of a, like a one-liner or a two-liner that describes
Right.
the role.
Right.
But that second one does not. Looks like there's some good accomplishments though.
Mm-hmm. And good metric, stuff.
Yeah.
We know they did a $3.5 billion budget, and we know it was an operations budget. Identified a $700 million incremental revenue.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Created a live KPI dashboard, delivered 15% increase in our. I mean, this is it's
got
talking about some
good
stuff.
content. Good content. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Of course, I could nitpick anything, but this is a solid, it's a solid resume.
From a content standpoint, you're right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're talking about the things I want to know about when it comes to finance. I want to know about the budgeting. I want to know about the money that you saved. I want to know about the systems that you put in place to be able to forecast what's happening with that budget. I like when you have, when you're tracking performance when it comes to that budget, when you're saying how you're saving money on taxes and things like that. That is what a finance person is supposed to do.
Yeah. Now I am interested in knowing, the last two jobs, finance director, but they're targeting a finance manager role. So maybe they're at a point in their career where they just want to take a step back, which is okay.
People tired. People real tired. But then it also could be where they worked, and maybe they had that title, but then when you look outside of the companies, it's really a manager. But I would ask my client what was the reason for going down, because I don't let my people go backwards.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You don't pay me to go backwards.
Yeah. But no, you're right. Content wise, it's a solid. So people pay attention. You look at this resume. There's you see a lot of good results there. Not just actions, but you see results.
And they're front loaded. And they're front loaded too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They are front loading it. And for you guys who maybe didn't catch it, front loading, what it's actually saying there is they're leading with the result. You're leading with the result, and then you're following up with the action or the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. And so this would be somebody that they would reach out to me and say, hey, I'm not getting interviewed, so I need you to redo my resume. And I would tell this person no. But I would offer them a coaching session where I can, teach them to correct some of these issues that they have, and to make better decisions when it comes to their career marketing strategy, not necessarily the resume. Because when you have a good resume, it's usually other things that you're either doing or not doing that's impacting your results.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And it may be that you're applying for positions that are too low based on what you've been doing.
Yeah.
So that could be it. But that's it. That's all I got for this resume.
Yep. Same here.
All right. Moving right along. Okay. Ciao. All right. Okay, this font is so tiny, and these 44-year-old eyes, baby, struggling to be able to see this. So I feel like this font is just way too small for this font. Yeah, it's just way too small. Because I shouldn't have to blow this up the way that I had to blow this up, right? So strategic doesn't really mean a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. So we want to find another, because again, that's one of those overused words. So find another way to describe yourself besides strategic, especially at this VP level. You want to talk more about the results, the type of results that you get. Try to describe yourself that way. For example, I had somebody who was a sales, going for a sales VP position. And so I noticed throughout their resume, they always, if they had a goal, they blew that goal out of the water. So we call that quota shattering, right? And so they were a quota shattering sales leader, right? So you see how that was very specific.
That'll get your attention.
To something that they had done. Crisis tested.
I like that. Yeah.
right?
I like
That
that.
means something way different than dynamic, strategic, results oriented. That means something different. So I think this resume has solid content, very, very strong metrics. Again, some of them are not front loaded because we got resulting in. Anytime I see resulting in
Mm-hmm.
or,
Mm-hmm.
or something like that, I already know that it's not front loaded. Okay. Um,
I like the career highlights because a lot of times
yes.
people can, like the organizational strategy, leadership, internal communications, those might be functional skills from the job description. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, take those functional skills, and then what they've done is they've explained what they've done to address that functional skill. So
Right.
it's kind of a hack code for resume writing. Check the job description for functional skills, and if you've done things that are directly tied to that skill, you can have a career highlight section just like that. Well, basically what they've done is
Mm-hmm.
they pulled to the front of the resume things they've done across their career that are really relevant for the role, hopefully.
Because really, if I fold your resume in half, again, I should be able to make a decision just by the top part of your
Yeah,
resume
yeah.
without ever looking at your experience. You should have highlighted that information so succinctly, so concisely, so effectively that I already know that I want to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and I see they got their languages there. They have their skills. Yeah, everything is bulleted. It has room to
Mm-hmm.
breathe, and all that. I just wish the font wasn't so tiny.
Yeah.
Again, they've got descriptions under each one.
Mm-hmm.
Again, results. Some of them again are not front loaded because we got increased revenue by 5% at the very end. But it also depends on what is important. Is you developing that first digital campaign, is it more important than you increasing the revenue by 5%? Because those are kind of two different accomplishments within one. And so when you have that situation, you have to decide which part of that accomplishment deserves front stage or center stage, however you want to say that. But I do like this. It seems like it may have been professionally written. But I feel like the font is just way too small. And then you see how you got so much breathing room here between the education,
Yeah.
but bullets, these are unnecessary bullets. You don't need bullets here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you also have this position and this position that don't have descriptions consistent with these
Right.
positions here.
Yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do something to one job, you got to do it to the next. It has to be consistent throughout, so it'll make sense because you are taking the reader on a journey. You are showing them the information that you want them to see. You are helping them digest that content more quickly. So when you switch up what you're doing and how the method and the strategy that you're using, it becomes confusing.
And just from a visual standpoint, I feel like the bold and underline of the functional skills feels a little bit overbearing. I maybe do bold only.
Overkill.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
bold
the
underline
font
feels.
choice.
Yeah.
Because the font choice, it's Times New Roman. Like I said, it's the Jerry Curl, sweatpants, whatever you want to call it, of fonts. It doesn't say modern at all. When I see Times New Roman and it's not on newspaper, it definitely makes me feel outdated.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so here I put a question down here for dates. And that is because I don't know that it's necessary to have these dates because AI itself is new. It's a new concept to the masses, right? I wanted to address these dates because while these dates are recent, it's fine to have them. I'm not saying that you can't have your dates here. Just saying, just be careful when you want to put dates on things because you also don't have dates on your education, but you've got dates on your certifications, right? So I want you to kind of be consistent with where you list dates because sometimes if I see, oh, well, this is recent, I wonder how long ago this was, and then it takes you down a rabbit hole that I wouldn't have even been thinking about if no dates were here at all. But this is what we mean when we say it's okay to put those dates if they're recent, because these are very, very recent.
Yeah.
Very, very recent dates. But just making the point that you can actually live without the dates here because AI, especially generative AI, is a new concept to the masses anyway. And when I say new, within the last 3-4 years, maybe even 5, maybe within 5. Do we have anything else for this one? Oh, let me point this out. So you see how this starts with designed, then we've got mentor, we've got create. So they're bouncing back and forth between present and
Yeah.
past tense. That is okay in your current position.
Current role.
You
Yeah.
will have things that you have done in the past, and then you will have things that you are actively in the
That is
process
true.
of doing. So
That
it's
is
okay
true.
to have that combination there. That will be the only time that that's acceptable,
Yeah.
is in that current position.
That foreign language is kind of feel like it's just lost up on the skills. It just feels like it's
Yeah.
is that the home for that? It just feels like it's sort of
Because they put multilingual here, and I feel like
yeah,
it could have been inserted there if we, if we had
yeah,
this written a little tighter, it would have fit. But center it maybe,
yeah,
because
yeah. I
it
was
does look
thinking if
like it
you
was
center
kind
it,
of,
then it would stand out a little bit more.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But no, otherwise I think it's
It's a
pretty
solid
easy.
resume.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean
like
we're kind of
really
nitpicking now.
solid.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wouldn't rewrite this person's resume. This again,
yeah.
this would be somebody that I would coach in other, in other areas. But
Mm-hmm.
not we wouldn't do a resume rewrite. Not a
Yeah,
full one anyway. We would,
yeah,
probably do a tailoring session, and maybe clean some things up, but I would not rewrite this resume.
yeah. One last thing, just again visually thing. First job, Washington D.C. is bold, and that's the only city state that's
That's the
bold.
only one. Yep.
Yeah, that's just not a big deal, but just a visual thing.
Yeah. Yep. All right. And then this is the last one. We got a 3-page resume this time. Payer and provider enrollment is the job target. And wait a minute. Just give me just a second here. I'm gonna stop sharing because it looks like one of my little things came off of here. We're gonna fix that for just a second. Hold on.
I hope people are getting value out of this.
I hope so too. We got questions in the chat while I'm fixing this.
How do I see that? Let me see. Show chat.
Okay. I don't know what in the world happened on here. All these
things. Oh yeah, we got a couple here.
And I think we are. All right, so I think we good here.
Okay. We do have. So I guess I can't put them in there. You have to show them, right? We do have some.
Yeah, I'll have to put them.
Okay.
But let me do this. Okay. And then, oops. Okay, here we go.
Oh.
All right, so this resume, typically really it just has the same issues that everybody else has. So it's accomplished. Same deal. Looks like there's like reducing turnaround time, credentialing approval, enhancing the overall operations efficiency. I mean, some great value here, but I would just like to see some descriptors be used differently. Overused is accomplished, dynamic, those things. So we, see repetition there. So they've got their medical services, they've got those skills in this section, and that is great. Looks like consistent with how they've listed out their, their positions. They did specify when they worked remote. I like that, because if you're going for a remote role, then you would want to, to definitely, have that information, have that information out there. But we want to see a description of what you did. Excuse me, a description of what you were responsible for doing, and then the bullets, talking about your accomplishments. Most of what I see here is really kind of, it's not accomplishments. There's some different fonts kind of going on too.
Yeah, different fonts. I'm
Uh-huh.
picking up on that. Everything's all bullets.
Yep. So that's the hang on. Oops. I'm sorry, y'all. I am sorry. Let me get back to. I think I'm doing too many things at one time, flipping through these screens. Hold on. Okay, here we go. I'm sorry. I don't know what button I hit. But anyway, so yep, so it looks like it's relevant. I'm not really sure what a lot of provider, and I know they work at insurance companies a lot of the times. It could be healthcare insurance companies. Sometimes it could be auto insurance or whatever. Their payer enrollment or provider enrollment. I want to see where you have, maybe implemented some new systems or processes, improved different processes. I see that there's, so there are some accomplishment bullets kind of woven in there with the, with the tasks. So for any of you who have a lot of bullets and you're unsure of how to separate these things, go in and say, where did I show impact? Okay, then highlight the ones that are actual achievements. Those are the only ones that should be bullets. The rest of that information, you should find a way to summarize that content to have it as a description of the job.
Yeah, position description, right, above the bullets and below, like the title and the job in the, company name. Yeah.
Right. So that's, that's what should be done with that. But overall, it is not a bad resume. A lot of you don't have bad resumes. Another thing I want to point out too, like this sentence right here. So there's some bolding going on there that's unnecessary. Typically, when I see stuff that's kind of copied and pasted out of, could be AI, it's unnecessarily bolded. So be careful. And I'm not by any means telling y'all not to use AI to write your resumes. Do it, because it's easy. It could be a shortcut, everything, but there is a right way to do it. That would be the only thing. Let's look at some questions here. Looks like we got just a few. Question, we have vertical pipeline. Yep, so I think that's it. Okay, here we go. Got a question. How can someone address a current gap in employment? Put it before the employment history since it's current, or put it at the end? It should be as close to the top of the resume as possible. So if you've got that gap and you're trying to explain it, put it above the employment experience. So say, for instance, you have a gap that is from 2023 until present, then you want to put just maybe a one-liner and say that you've had some sort of, gap because of a thing, right? You don't have to go into detail with, it could be for personal reasons. It could be that you went to school. It could be because you're looking for a job. If that is the case, that you're that you can say break in, a career break from 2023 until present, currently seeking, after position restructure. You can list that your contract ended. You can list that you were laid off, whatever that was, and say what you're, the types of jobs that you're targeting. Currently, targeting payer enrollment, jobs. I'm just using that as an example because that's the resume that's there.
Yeah.
Right.
What the gap was like, I don't know, 5 years ago. Is that even an issue? Do you need to speak to a
if you've had some jobs since that gap, I wouldn't worry about the gap unless you're getting into interviews and you see that the same question keeps coming up over and over again. When you see that repetition in the types of questions that you're being asked about something that may be confusing with your document or what you're saying or whatever, then that's how you can know that there's something that you need to address. That's a bottleneck in your process that you need to
Mhm.
address. So
Mhm.
that way, so if they keep asking you, everybody keep asking you about the same gap, address the gap.
Yeah.
Okay. If they keep asking you about this same job title or this same location or this same, little thing, address it. And you can address it either on the resume or you can address it in the cover letter. I would prefer you do both, because depending on who it is that you're interviewing with or who you're talking to, that gap, that information may not be, front of mind for them. Like as a recruiter, because I review so many resumes at a time, the cover letter was the last thing I was checking for.
Mhm.
Now, my hiring team, they got your full packet. They got whatever you submitted in the system when you applied is what the hiring manager got. So I will review that information before I sent it so I can tell the hiring manager what was included in the package.
Mhm.
I would look at the cover letter as a recruiter to find out, why are you relocating? If you put something on there about your pay, why are you downgrading? Why have you been a director or a VP and you're applying for a manager or coordinator role? Right? I wanted those types of explanations on the cover letter. But otherwise, by volume, I didn't have time to read cover letters. And that's the story for most recruiters. So when you hear people say, they're not going to read your cover letter anyway, who is they? Because I can tell you that hiring managers, if I sent them the cover letters, they did read them. They may
Yeah.
not have read them word for word, but they did address it. And a lot of times they would ask me questions about things that were in the cover letter.
Mhm.
But again, for this resume, it is no reason why this resume right here should be 3 pages, because there's obviously no gaps here. So I can't use this resume as an example here. But if you do have a current gap, put it before your experience, and really just put it before your experience, period. If you didn't go to school, if you didn't volunteer, or something to fill that gap. But yeah, address whatever is the issue, whatever is the roadblock. Let's see what we got going on here. Carla, the best font recommendations, you can actually Google it. What are the top 10 font recommendations? It'll give you a whole list, because it'll give you I think it gives you about maybe 10, 15 of them. But I think it is you can use Arial, you can use Calibri, you can use Georgia, you can use Aptos. Aptos is now the default font in, even in Outlook. So you can look at what those universal fonts are, meaning that regardless of the system, that font can be read,
Mhm.
and it's not considered outdated. Times New Roman is one that is, outdated. Comic Sans is something that if you use that font, people won't take you seriously because it looks like comic book stuff. So yeah. Let's see. Can you provide an example of how to word an accomplishment that has nothing to do with numbers? Yeah. If you improve productivity on something by doing something else, right? You may not have a percentage of how much you improve the productivity. You just know it got better. Think of it when you think about hamburgers, right? I'm hungry. So we talk about food. I'm always hungry. If you tell somebody that a hamburger is better at Wendy's than it is at Burger King, do you tell them that it's 73% better? It doesn't make sense. So not always do numbers make sense. Numbers should create an understanding so that you can get the context of what is happening. But numbers aren't always appropriate. Like, unless you're doing some sort of customer service survey or something like that, you may not have how much customer service improved.
Right.
Right. So, yeah.
Actually, if you go to so in the middle of the second page resume, third bullet down from the top on the second page. So it says monitor licensure expirations, preventing service interruptions. So to address that question,
That's an accomplishment.
prevented service interruptions by monitoring licensure expiration. So that's a starter one. You could probably dig a little bit more, but that's more you can write without numbers at all.
Right, with no numbers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hope that helps.
Yep. Let's see. I think that may be it. Yep. All right. So that is it. So what we're going to do, we are going to try to do this again on May the 1st? May the 1st, 4:00. So Thursday, 4:00 Central, 5:00 Eastern. To have your resume submitted, you can send it to either me or Nathan. We are on the event invite, so you gotta go digging around, for anything. He's listed as a speaker. I'm listed as a speaker there. That's where you can find us on LinkedIn. You can search us by our name, Nathan Adams, or you can, Ashley Watkins Thomas. I'm there on that. And then if you want to work with either one of us, you're able to do that as well. Here is our contact information, and here's Nathan's LinkedIn. He's at Nathan Adams, CPRW. He is a certified professional resume writer. Yep, you can reach me at rightstepresumes.com. We help you with, again, all things job search, resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn profiles, interviewing, networking, job search strategy, anything that you need to get you to the next role that you're targeting. We can help you kind of sort through a lot of this information that you're getting. You get different things from different people.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a lot. Yeah, depending on the industry, somebody is asking whether or not Times New Roman is outdated. Yes, generally speaking, it is outdated, but some fields, I know IT is one that's kind of stuck with the Times New Roman. I don't ever write a resume with Times New Roman.
Never ever.
Not saying that you're going to get, not going to get a job because you wrote your resume in Times New Roman.
Right.
No, we're talking about just the visual aspect. As humans, we are visual creatures. We are emotional creatures. So there are things that you invoke within us when we see certain things on documents. And so one of them is you being with the times. Why are you using something that's behind the times?
Times New Roman is like pleats and cuffs for a man's suit.
Yeah.
I had to give up my pleats and cuffs about, 5 years ago. So there you go. No more pleats and cuffs. Times New Roman.
All right. Well, I'm glad you guys were seeing a lot of comments saying it was helpful. I'm so glad that you're finding this helpful. Again, we're going to do this again on May the 1st. You'll see the event come up. So don't worry about trying to, having to remember it. We'll put the event announcement out there. But if you want your resume reviewed, you can send it to me or Nathan on LinkedIn. We are accepting them on LinkedIn. So that's a cue to those of you who are watching on YouTube or on Facebook. Get on LinkedIn. You need to be on LinkedIn. That's where the big kids play. All right. Thank you so much, you guys. We will see you next time.
Thank you all.